In today's episode, I'm going to introduce you to one of the most interesting mini PCs of recent times, called the Ninkear MBOX 6. It has powerful hardware, and there are a bunch of unusual features inside that you need to know about, so let's dive right in. Well, this episode will be a bit different in that I won't go too deep into the specifications or the benchmark results. I've written a pretty detailed review of this machine, and the link will be in the video description, so check it out if you're interested in those details. Instead, I'd like to talk to you about what this machine is actually good for and highlight some interesting features that are worth mentioning. As usual, we'll go through the standard things: unboxing, accessories, I'll touch a bit on the hardware, and then I'll share my experiences and my opinion about this whole device. There aren't too many surprises in the unboxing, as you'll find just one HDMI cable and the console itself in the box. With the console, you can mount the device on the back of your monitor. So in the end, it's a space-saving solution, just like with any mini PC. Other than that, there's just a manual and the main unit itself. You won't find anything else quite like it. The machine itself actually looks pretty good, with the manufacturer's name prominently displayed in elegant chrome lettering. The plastics are nice, black, sometimes slightly textured, sometimes matte. So in my opinion, this turned out really well. Another special feature is this metal plate on the top cover, which actually plays a minor role in cooling as well. Of course, the most interesting part of the machine isn't this, but the fact that it's modular. In this case, modularity means that the machine can be taken apart into two pieces. Yes, we have a lower part and an upper part. The lower part contains the connectors, while the upper part houses the main unit, the hardware itself. Of course, I took these apart and looked inside each one, but before I talk about that, I'll give you a general idea of what the machine can do. So the point is that this machine has relatively powerful hardware because instead of the usual Intel N series processor, it comes with an AMD Ryzen 5 processor, along with 16 gigabytes of memory and 512 gigabytes of storage, which makes it a pretty decent entry-level machine. Ultimately, it can absolutely replace a desktop PC, so from this perspective, this mini PC turned out really well. The modularity is particularly interesting in this case, because if we take the machine apart, in the lower section we find the option to expand the SSD, as well as some connectors. We find 4 USB ports out of the 4, 2 are USB 2.0 and 2 are USB 3.0. We have 4 Ethernet ports, one of them is 1 gigabit and the other is 2.5 gigabit. There's also HDMI and DisplayPort. Well, that's about it. And sorry, there's also a dedicated headphone output, so the usual essential things you typically find on a desktop PC are present here as well, and perhaps even a bit more thanks to the 2 integrated Ethernet ports. On the top part, compared to this, there's not much to be found. We have a power button, a USB-C port on the front, and another USB-C port on the back. The rear USB-C is for power, while the front USB-C is a fully functional connector. Through this, you can output video, audio, data, basically everything from the device. So this is a fully functional USB-C port. Speaking of being fully functional, it's important to note that since you can output video through this port, as well as through HDMI and DisplayPort, you can connect 3 monitors to this device simultaneously, which I think is quite a unique feature. There are 2 important things I need to point out regarding the hardware. First, the memory cannot be expanded. The memory modules are soldered onto the motherboard, just like in a budget notebook. So you won't be able to add more memory. 16 gigabytes that come with it is all you get. However, you can expand the storage. As I mentioned, you can install it in the lower part of the docking station. There's an M.2 port inside. You can insert an SSD into the M.2 port. What's important to mention here is that if you put an SSD in this, the bandwidth will be shared between the SSD in the main unit and the one in the dock. So your storage capacity will increase, but the access speed will decrease. You need to take this into account as well. I didn't run too many performance tests. The results I did get can be found in the article, so check them out there. Now, I'd rather focus on what this machine is good for and what it can actually be used for. Well, based on the tests, I can say that it's not really suitable for gaming, although older games run perfectly fine on it. For example, you'll definitely be able to play CS on it, but it's probably not worth trying with newer games. For that, you might need to get an external graphics card dock, which is quite expensive, especially if it comes with a graphics card. So I would rather recommend this machine for office work, and of course it's perfectly suitable for older games as well. I used it for office work, and besides that, I also edited videos and did some photo editing on it. The really good news is that the machine is powerful enough for editing 4K videos. It's true that it does have some trouble with really heavy effect-laden videos, but for basic 4K video editing, it's absolutely perfect. So if you want, you'll be able to get a bit creative with it as well. For photo editing, video editing, and similar tasks, it will be absolutely fine and you won't have any problems with it. Of course, the main question isn't really this, since with the Ryzen 5 processor, the memory and the storage, you probably already guessed that it would be suitable for these kinds of tasks. The most interesting question about this machine is what this modularity is actually good for. So what is the point of having this lower docking part and the upper part separate like this? Why is it good for us that it can be taken apart like this? Well, the manufacturer thought that just like laptops have docking stations at your workplace, it's also useful for a mini PC like this to have a dock, because you can leave this lower part at your workplace, connect monitors, a keyboard, and a mouse to it. It sits on your desk. When you go to work, you bring your mini PC from home with you. You snap it in and you can start working. So far, so good. The problem is, I consider a notebook to be a fully functional computer, meaning it has a display, a keyboard, and a touchpad instead of a mouse. So even if you don't have anything else with it, you can still work on it, use it, play games, watch videos, you can do all sorts of things with it. But with a mini PC, you can't do anything, because it's just a PC. It doesn't have a keyboard, a mouse, a monitor, nothing. In order to use this, you absolutely need a second piece of hardware at home as well. So at home, you need a monitor, a keyboard, and a mouse. That's the minimum required to be able to work with it or do anything at all with it. Because of this, I find the whole thing a bit pointless, since I really don't see why I would carry this computer home. Because there would be one reason why I might think it's worth taking it home, like if I could take my data home, but these days most of us work from the cloud anyway. In other words, we might not even need to carry the data with us. It's more than enough if we have any kind of small computer at home that we can sit down at and work on. I'm not sure I'd want to carry my main work computer home in my bag or pocket. Of course, if the option is available, if you think this works for you, you can carry it around since you have a dock for it. My other significant issue with this particular device is that the main unit only has 2 USB-C ports, which I personally think is sometimes a bit too few. It's certainly true that you can easily connect an external monitor to one of the full-featured ports, and it does indeed have both Bluetooth and Wi-Fi 6, so you can readily access networks wirelessly and conveniently connect a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse. So basically for fundamental work, you genuinely won't need anything else. Still, sometimes it would be nice if it had some additional USB ports, because what if, for example, you want to plug in a flash drive? So this is again one of those things that, in my opinion, wasn't very well thought out. And they could have made some changes here. I would have added more USB ports to this base unit because for me this seems too few. My thoughts on this machine are that in terms of hardware, it's really good. The Ryzen 5 16GB of RAM and 512GB of storage are absolutely sufficient for basic tasks, work, and everyday use. You can even edit videos and photos, so from this perspective, there's no problem with this machine. The dock itself is also really great. You can add extra storage to it, there are plenty of ports, 2 types of Ethernet connectors, so you have everything you might need at your disposal. I'm just not sure I would separate these 2 devices, the dock and the top part. I'd rather use them together as one unit. Compared to the competition, the only advantage I see in being able to separate these 2 parts is just that they can be separated. Namely, the Ryzen 5 processor can get quite hot, and in other machines of similar system mini PCs with the Ryzen 5 and packed with connectors, you just can't build in as much or as effective cooling as you can in this one, because this has the space for it. In other machines where these connectors are located, which here are in the docking station, there just isn't as much space. So, in this machine, they installed a rather powerful, large-sized cooling system. You can see it here. I took the machine apart as well to check out what this heat pipe cooling system is like that they put in. And considering the size of the machine we're talking about, they really did put in a massive cooling system. By the way, this was noticeable during use as well, because the machine didn't get too hot during basic tasks. There was only one task where the fan spun up a bit, and that was when I had to export the finished video from the editing program. There, the RPM did go up a bit, but even that wasn't bad, it wasn't distracting, and it didn't last long. So, to sum up, the current situation is that the Ninkear MBOX 6 is indeed a premium mini PC, since it has really good and powerful hardware components inside. Made from premium materials, it features Wi-Fi 6, a 2.5G Ethernet port, and the option to connect 3 monitors. So, it has everything you could expect from a mini PC like this. They put everything into it, the materials are good, it looks great, everything about it is really nice. Well, unfortunately, the price reflects that too, since they're asking a little over 100,000 forints for it. And to be honest, we have to say that you can get a machine with similar hardware for less than this. Of course, those aren't modular, they don't come in 2 parts, you don't get as many ports, and you don't have as many features. So, it's a clear trade-off. If you're looking for a machine that's truly perfect for general office work at home, but also quite good for creative tasks like video editing and similar demanding things, and one that can handle basic games, not necessarily the very latest titles, but you'll be able to play slightly older games just fine, and I can definitely recommend the Ninkear MBOX 6 to you, because it's basically a very good machine even if you have to pay a bit of a premium for it. Well, that's about all I can say about this machine. As I mentioned, you'll find a link to the written article in the video description. If this device has caught your interest, be sure to read that as well. And now, it's time to say a tearful goodbye, because this was the last product review before the summer break. Most likely, I'll only be back with a new video at the very end of August or the very beginning of September. So I'm putting on my sunglasses and picking up the summer hat I carefully set aside at the end of last summer, and I'm off to take a much-needed, well-deserved break. Take care, look after yourselves, and see you at the end of summer. Bye!